Tell me that you don't understand how religion is developed without telling me you don't understand how religion is developed. So when I looked at this person's comment on my video where I said that there are no true followers of Christ, and in that video, I expressly detail out how no one who calls themselves a follower of the Christ or even this Christ mind or whatever you want to call it, I talk more about the Christ mind in my esoteric Christian video, that none of you follow it simply because you don't follow the rules of the Old Testament, because your Jesus in Matthew said that you should do all the things that the Pharisees and Sadducees are telling you to do based on the law of Moses. But y'all don't do that. And then he breaks out with, you're talking about culture, not religion. So do you not understand exactly how religions are created and formed? Do you think religions are created in a vacuum? No, they're not. So you may think that with the Adam and Eve story that there is a vacuum of culture because there's only two people, and based on those two people, they form religion. But Adam and Eve never formed a religion. It's not until the birth of Seth that man starts calling upon the name of God. So then Cain has already went out into the city and built Nod, and he's already built a culture. And evidently there are other cultures that are already being developed by the time Seth is around. So culture is around before people start worshiping God, according to your book. Now, what we do know that prior to the happenings of your book, which would have been happening around 4,600 BCE, that during the time frame prior to that, with the Sumerians and the Akkadians, with the people of the Kemetic people and the people of Cush, that these people had already developed cultures. And within the development of these cultures, there is religion. And each religion is different based on the culture. Now, because we're looking at these Mediterranean cultures, these Mesopotamian cultures, and these East African cultures, when we talk about Cush or Kish, when we talk about Kemet, when we talk about Sumeria, Arcadia, when we talk about the Canaanites or any of these other people that came before Hebrews, they developed a culture, and within the culture came a religion. And because they were close to one another, we find a lot of similarities because they shared in ideas, but then the differences of their environment created certain differences within their religion. And that's why the stories are similar, but they're not always the same. Yes, they did borrow from one another, but because of their physical environment and their culture, they obtained different forms of religion. Now, during those same time frames, if we skip our little happiness over into, say, Ireland or England, they developed a different culture based on their different environment. And based on that different environment with these different people, their different culture created a different religion. And then we skip down into Southern Africa, south of the Sahara, because these people were living in more green and mountainous areas and flat plains and Serengetis and had different animals and different types of rivers and streams and volcanoes, or the lack thereof. They had a different culture. The ones who were inland had a different culture from the ones who were coastal. The coastal people had ocean gods and big, huge water gods, you know, your Mamawatas, whereas your ones who were inland had more river gods, lake gods. The same way your Greeks would have Poseidon and their big ocean gods, the ones who, the Germanic religions that was living closer to the Rhine River had river gods. No ocean gods, just river gods. They didn't know there was an ocean until they discover an ocean. Then once they realize there's an ocean, then they create an ocean god. They all looked up at the stars and they saw the heavenly bodies of the sky. They saw the different stars. They saw meteorites and they saw comets. And so they deified those things. Or they made astrological assessments beyond just tracking the moon and the sun. And they created different zodiacs, different navigational tools to be able to walk around. Like they got some walk around money and know where they're going based on their understanding of the stars, but they deified them. And they all deified them in different ways. Different ways. Some stars were common, some were not. Orion's belt, very common. But to others, other constellations, they have different names, different agendas. Canis Major is what the Greeks called the star that's where star Sirius is, whereas the Kemetic people call that the constellation of Aset, or in the Greek name, Isis. So you see, there is no separation between religion and culture. So when I say that your Jesus, who was living in a culture of the Jewish people in Judea during the Roman times, told the people, listen to what the Pharisees teach, listen and do what they teach, because they stand on the throne of Moses, on the altar, of Moses. But just don't do like the Pharisees and Sadducees, because they don't follow the rules themselves. But you are to follow the rules, the commandments, the laws, the rituals that they have set forth from the altar of Moses. You are supposed to do them. The reason why you say that's culture and not religion is because you don't want to do animal sacrifices. And I understand, and I'm glad that you don't. You don't want to have chattel slavery, and I understand, and I'm glad that you don't. You don't want to have to sell off your daughters to the highest bidder or the agreed upon bidder, and I'm glad that you don't. You don't want that if someone essays your daughter who has not already been betrothed to another man, that then if he pays you 50 pieces of silver, you then have to allow your daughter to marry that man, to marry your daughter, and he cannot divorce her and must provide children for him. You don't want that for your daughter, and I'm glad that you don't. So I'm glad that you don't want to follow these rules, wearing your mixed linens and what foods you can and cannot eat. You don't want to follow those rules. Fine, great. You want to say that they're cultural. Fine, great. But your Jesus, your Christ, your Christos said that you are to follow the laws, the rules, the rituals that the Pharisees and Sadducees were saying based on them standing on the altar of Moses. So you're trying to separate it because it doesn't fit in how we live today. It doesn't fit our laws today, as a matter of fact. But you can't separate the two. This is why so many people are walking away from this profane religion. It's because we recognize that it's just a religion that was built on a culture that don't exist anymore. It was built on a culture whose moralities was much lower than ours today. This is why almost every person on the planet has a higher moral barometer than the God of your Bible. Almost everyone on the planet today would say slavery is not good. Almost everyone on the planet today will say that a woman should be able to choose her husband. Almost every person on the planet today will say that animals should not be sacrificed for you to atone for sins to an image of a God that you believe in. Almost every person on the planet today will say that you should never conquer a town and kill all the men, kill all the women, kill all the babies, kill all the old people, and kill all the animals and burn the whole city down. Total war is not something that most people will agree upon. And we certainly wouldn't agree upon a situation where you kill all the men, kill all the baby boys, kill all the women who have known a man. But for the young girls who have not known a man, make them your wives. So yes, we have a higher moral standard than the culture that wrote your Bible. And that's a good thing. But the fact that you're supposed to follow that, therein lies the problem. That's a bad thing. So although I understand you want to separate the culture and the religion, you can't. They go hand in hand. That is how religions are created. They're created by the time frame of that culture, and their morality is based on the time frame of that culture. Want another quick example of that? Racism was profound in the Americas back at the time frame when John Smith wanted to start the Mormons. In starting the Mormons, he wrote that black people are to serve white people, that God's beforehand and God beforehand and Jesus and everybody else and all the angels were white and delightsome. And it is only those who did not choose to fight in the war between Lucifer and Jesus, they were cursed to be the black people. And that the only way that they can go to heaven is to go through some kind of transformation. And even when they go through that transformation, they are still to serve the white people in heaven. But as time went on and the culture changed, and people like President Carter told the Mormon church, hey, you want to keep that 501c3? Change your religion, change your message. And they changed it. And it didn't really get a hard change until the 2000s, but they changed it. Religion is based on culture. Culture is based on religion. So you have a great day, and always remember, they're inseparable, but you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.